Hello again, everybody, and following up this time with sort of more information on biochemical individuality and also this idea of the work of Dr. Weston A. Price back in the 1930s. And by the way, if anybody gets any sort of visions in the background, we're doing the homeschooling thing, so you know that will be different people passing through. So apologies for that. But let me take you back to the mid 1930s, and Dr. Price traveling the world studying indigenous populations. Found out with the Quechua Indians that they have a nice healthy diet of low fats, lean meats, lots of fruits and lots of above ground vegetables, and they're a perfectly healthy population. In contradiction to that, then he goes and look at the Inuits up on the polar ice caps and find that they are equally healthy, equally fit, and yet they're eating a diet that is polar opposite of what the Indians are eating. And out of that comes this concept of biochemical individuality. Well, to add further to the evidence on this, I want to tell you a little story about the Aboriginal people, who again are largely considered to be the original human beings. And certainly, you know, sort of, I think that's sort of all part of their name. Lots of fascinating stuff done on the Aborigines, but this little anecdote I want to share with you is about one of the sort of bits of research that's been done on the Aborigines. Is that can often be described as two sort of sectors of Aborigines, so inland and coastal Aborigines. And obviously, because of food stalls and food sources, then their diets are actually quite dramatically different. The inland Aborigines have a diet that is much lower in meat, much leaner meats, obviously less available to them. So again, much like the Quechua Indians, they're forced to live off the land and the fruit and the things that they can harvest off the land. You know, they do have, and certainly in the wilder parts, they do have, you know, sort of a relatively decent supply of meat, but it's nowhere near as plentiful of those on the coast, whose diet obviously includes a lot more fish and a lot more seafood, and therefore is a lot higher in sort of the oils and the fats that are associated with this. Well, what happened in Dr. Price's work was that the inland Aborigines were sort of families taken from inland and moved to the coast, and families taken from the coast and moved to inland. And what they noticed that was within 2 generations, those families were now ill, and they were suffering from the chronic and metabolic diseases that we know of today, okay, that we appear normal today. But they were also suffering from irregularities of the dental arches and conspicuous facial deformities. So some fairly drastic changes have occurred to what is ostensibly the same people by moving their geography and changing their diet. More work has been done latterly on that, when the Aborigines were encouraged and have been available to, or been able to adopt what they call the displacing foods of modern commerce. These things are white flour, sugar, jams, canned food, and teas. Is the fact that these same dental irregularities and facial deformities occurred, but in the next generation. So it accelerated the deformities, okay, and the poor health of these tribes, you know, within 1 generation. And then what's happened even more rapidly than that is that when they were again introduced to these white flours, sugars, jams, canned foods, these very Western foods, that tooth decay and disease of every type previously not seen in these populations, okay, occurred before those people dropped out. So within decades rather than, you know, years and decades rather than within sort of generations. And so again, I'm only sharing this with you because it's evidence and a different way of thinking and a different way of looking at health and nutrition. Again, there are lots of options out there to you, but if you're looking and if you're suffering with symptoms, if you're suffering with chronic diseases, whether that be obesity, whether that be diabetes, whether that be things, you know, perhaps more significant, if I dare say that, you know, types of cancers, leukemias and other bits and pieces, then, you know, what you eat really, really can have an impact and is well worth spending some time looking into and considering. And I was actually talking to somebody yesterday who suffered with ME for a couple of years and has found that, you know, since looking deeply into their diet, they've had quite a nice improvement in their sort of symptoms for that. food, we are what we eat. Food affects every single facet of our body and is therefore linked and can have an impact, in my belief, on every single illness and disease out there. You know, not just the sort of the high population ones of weight loss and obesity and things like that, but you know, everything through ME through to long COVID and other bits and pieces like that. So again, my point today is think about what you're eating, look into it, think about your ancestry, and think about what original people can teach you about your diet.